Hello and welcome to Smaulgld, foreign holders of U.S. Treasury securities update. Chinese holdings of U.S. Treasuries soar in 2017. Chinese Treasury holdings surged to $1.2 trillion in August. That is a 12-month high. Russian U.S. Treasury holdings are up 41% since October 2016, or 31 billion. And Russian U.S. Treasury holdings are at their highest level since September 2014. Chinese U.S. Treasury holdings are up 151.2 billion since October 2016, which incidentally is the last month that the People's Bank of China reported adding any gold to her reserves. Brazil, Switzerland, UK, Saudi Arabia, India, and France also have boosted their holdings of U.S. Treasuries significantly in 2017. And remember that Saudi threat to dump U.S. Treasuries over the 9/11 Commission issue? Well, that didn't materialize, as Saudi U.S. Treasury holdings have surged nearly 50% over the past 12 months. So higher U.S. interest rates, the new Trump administration, and improving Russian and Chinese finances have led to a surge in Treasury buying. Are we witnessing re-dollarization? Let's take a look. Well, this chart, and by the way, you can see all the charts better on Smaulgld.com. I'll leave the link below. Here are the overall holdings of foreigners of U.S. Treasuries since November 2016 through the most recent report, which covers August. Well, those holdings have grown over a quarter of $1 trillion to $276 billion. Now, for those of you who like to say that the yuan is taking over and it's going to become some type of threat to the dollar and it's a reserve currency, well, I don't know where you're hearing that. I know you like to hear that from a lot of gold sellers, silver sellers. China's got gold, China's on the move, China plays the long game. Nonsense. The world doesn't trust the Chinese yuan for good reason. They have a debt to GDP ratio over 300. They don't trust their data. You know, you think you don't trust the US data? Well, China, first of all, many gold bugs don't trust the Chinese gold data. So if you don't trust their gold data, do you trust their bad debt data, which they say is just 5%? But other analysts say it's 35%. So I think we need to add a little perspective here about China. Gold is not what China is all about. I would say debt is what China is all about. Now let's look at what all 149 reporting central banks show as what they hold as reserves. Well, here's the dollar. They've held over $4.5 trillion, up to almost $6 trillion in dollar reserves. The next most widely held reserve is the euro, and nearly $2 trillion are held, and this is over the last 2 years, year and a half. And then some banks hold yen, some banks hold pounds, and down here, if you can see, maybe you want to get your magnifying glass out. This is the amount of RMB, Chinese yuan, held as reserves by foreign central banks. Nothing. So when you start saying that the Chinese yuan is threatening the dollar hegemony, I'm looking here and you show me the threat. Seriously, show me the threat. Oh, well, they're going to back the yuan by gold. Nonsense. Nonsense. They are not going to back the yuan by gold. That would destroy the entire export-based economy. It would make borrowing costs go higher. It's ridiculous to think that they're going to do that. And in the context of this gold-backed yuan for oil, convertible into yuan, that is also ridiculous because they don't have the mechanism to do that on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. They have not announced that they're going to do that. It doesn't make sense for them to do that. And yet that story persists, despite the fact that there is no source for that story other than a story in the Nikkei Asian Review. Now, I have to take a good look at that chart. Let's take a look at the dollar index. The dollar is first of all, this is the dumping treasury story right here. Dumping. They're not dumping anything. Okay, no one's been paying attention to this. I've been reporting on this for months. I predicted this would happen when Trump came in, that there'd be a resurgence in U.S. Treasury buying, and we've seen it. We're going to take a look at China and Russia's Treasury holding. But first, the dollar is crashing. No, it's not. No, it is not. It has gone down 10% after rising nearly 25% over the past couple of years. It is adjusting. Look, 2008, the dollar index was down here. Then they do QE, it drops, it drops. They stop doing QE, and look what happens. Up it goes. Now it's adjusted a bit, but it's come back up. So this whole concept that the dollar is headed to zero, that is a gold seller, silver seller, dollar bear story, narration that you get repeated to the point where people believe it, insist on it. Dollars, days are numbered. Okay, so what's going to replace it? The Chinese yuan. There you go. Sure it is. Right away. Okay, now let's look at the Chinese and Russian. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the world loves the dollar, that there are not de-dollarization efforts afoot. I'm just saying they haven't gained the traction that the hype and the narrative, it doesn't equal that. So, yes, China didn't like the fact when the U.S. did QE. These are the QE periods. That was very harmful for the dollar. But guess what's happened since QE? The U.S. has stopped QE. They've raised interest rates a few times. And Japan's doing QE. Europe is doing QE. ECB is doing QE. Swiss National Bank is weakening their currency, printing francs and buying U.S. equities. The Chinese are printing money like mad, and they're going into massive debt. And whenever they have a debt crisis that looks like it's bubbling up, they just extend the terms of the loans or they lend more money. So you can't say that any of these currencies are not totally infected with debt. In fact, just to show how ridiculous the whole global debt system is, not just the U.S., not just China. What most countries are holding in big amounts of reserves as an asset are U.S. Treasuries. Here we go. China. Look at that. Dumping treasuries. China is now back to being the #1 holder of U.S. Treasuries. Look at that increase. They're back to 1.2 trillion in holding U.S. Treasuries. That is not dumping the treasuries, going to crash the dollar. That's all fantasy. Now let's look at Russia. Same thing. Russia is a different kettle of fish. First of all, China has no interest in crashing the dollar. They have an interest in internationalizing the yuan. That doesn't mean they want to crash the dollar, destroy all their dollar assets, destroy their trade with Europe, destroy their trade with the United States. They don't want to do that. So the fact that anyone even thinks that is ridiculous. Now, Russia is far more of an, you could say, enemy of the United States than China, because Russia has no business with the United States, very little trade historically, and it's under sanctions by the United States. So it has no incentive to hold U.S. dollars. It has no incentive to play ball with the United States. China is intricately linked with the United States. They can't get out of that. And they don't want to get out of that. They just want a little more room to get the yuan there. And this is all going to be a slow process. And there's no guarantee that the Chinese will ever get their house in order with the amount of debt that they have. But let's look at Russia. Now, this is a supposed enemy, and I'm not disagreeing. But their treasury holdings have increased. Why? Well, Russia isn't stupid either. Russia knows that the world runs on dollars. Russia knows that in order to improve its finances, it can't just add gold. Because remember, if it adds gold, it's not going to spend it. So it has to add treasuries to boost its reserve position. And that's what they're doing. So this dumping treasury narrative, you got to forget it until you see them dumping. But when you see the numbers here, and you see most people don't see these numbers. All they do is listen to commentators on YouTube. Dumping treasuries, dollar collapse, game over. They don't look at this. They don't look at the numbers. Oh, we don't trust the numbers. They're official numbers. What numbers do you trust? You just trust anything? Okay, now look at Saudi Arabia. Here's one. Now, in April 2016, Saudi Arabia threatened to dump its U.S. Treasury holdings if the U.S. Congress passed that 9/11 bill, which would allow people to sue Saudi Arabia. And they said, we're gonna dump treasuries. This is an outrage. Congress passed the bill in September 2016. Obama, who had promised to veto it, vetoed it. And Congress overrode his veto at the end of September and passed it. Well, here's Saudi Arabia's threat materializing. They added treasuries, 40, 50% of treasuries since that bill passed. So, yes, one day the dollar will no longer be the world's reserve currency. One day the dollar will no longer be the most trusted currency on the planet. And one day the United States will not be the world's biggest empire. And one day you shall die. And we just have to look at these numbers and see what is the direction. Not is what is the direction of what people are shouting about, the narratives people are pumping. What do the numbers show? And the numbers don't show the significant drop off in the dollar. They don't show a significant drop off in anything. You may not like that, and you may want to think, and you may want to believe sources that aren't sources. You may want to believe what you hear on the internet. You may want to believe, because it suits the narrative that somehow gold is going to go higher. Gold back yuan, gold redeemable, whatever it is. COMEX default, Shemitah. I think there's just too much of that. No one's looking at the numbers, or if they are, they're just ignoring them and making up stories. Sovereign size gold buy in 45 days, guaranteed, going to rock the global markets and shock the world. Look at the numbers. Don't listen to narratives unless you want to just be a person who listens to narratives. I would suggest listen to the narratives and then also look at the data. And does the data match the narrative? If it doesn't, something's lying. Now, you could say the data's lying. Let's find some other data that supports the narrative. I think that about does it for today. Yes, so please remember to subscribe, like this channel. And if you're interested in buying precious metals, you can do so through the links below. It's not investment advice, but if you want to buy precious metals, you can through BGSC, Golden Eagle Coin, SD Bullion, and Money Metals Exchange at the links. And you visit those links, you pay no more or less than if you visit them directly. And Smaulgld gets a small commission. If you also want to dabble into cryptocurrencies, you can sign up for a Coinbase account. Again, not investment advice that you do that. If you're going to do that, if you sign up at Coinbase, you buy $100 worth of Bitcoin, you will get $10 worth of free Bitcoin, and Smaulgld will get the same. And also, if you don't want to buy anything, that's fine. I'm not even advising that you do. But I do advise you, if you'd like and you enjoy this channel, to become a Smaulgld patron, to donate via PayPal, donate via Bitcoin or Litecoin at all the links below. And remember to subscribe to Smaulgld.com. Thank you very much.